Welcome to the English with Samuel podcast. I'm Samuel, and this is episode 2 of our podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, I can assure you that this podcast will be incredibly beneficial for honing your English listening abilities. This podcast is tailored for individuals who are looking to improve their listening comprehension, but may still struggle to understand native speakers when they converse at a normal pace or with other native speakers. If you find yourself unable to grasp natural English speech, then this podcast is the perfect resource for you. I delve into various topics without relying on a script. That's right, I haven't pre-planned what I'm going to say. I'm not reading anything. I'm simply speaking naturally, as thoughts come to my mind. And even though I'm speaking in a natural, conversational style with everyday words, I make a conscious effort to speak a little more clearly and at a slightly slower pace to facilitate your understanding. So this is the fundamental format of the podcast. I discuss a couple of different topics in each episode in a clear, slightly slower, yet still natural manner. I use the same words, phrases, and expressions that I would typically use in my daily life. Furthermore, I provide a complete transcript for every episode. So if you require the transcript to help you comprehend what I'm saying, you can easily find it attached to each episode. This additional resource should also prove to be very helpful for your learning journey. In this particular episode, I'm going to discuss 2 distinct topics: breakfast and camping. These might seem like rather random subjects, but I find both of them quite engaging. Before we dive in, please remember that if you're seeking more listening practice, you can visit my Patreon here on this video and subscribe to our listening practice seminars. These seminars are only $1 each, making them an excellent and affordable way to get more practice. So make sure to sign up if you're eager to enhance your listening skills. All right, let's get started. First, let's talk about breakfast. This is a topic I particularly enjoy. Breakfast is, without a doubt, my favorite meal of the day. Typically, we have 3 main meals: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. However, in some countries, there might be more than 3 meals. But in most cultures, and certainly in most countries, we observe some form of breakfast. It's the very first meal of the day. To begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the American breakfast, the classic American breakfast. People often form a certain image of American breakfast from watching American movies and TV shows. And for the most part, this image of the American breakfast is quite accurate. However, what I want to emphasize is that we don't eat this type of elaborate breakfast every single day. For instance, on weekdays, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, most Americans simply don't have the time to prepare a large breakfast. We have to get ready for work, prepare ourselves for the day, and we usually don't have a lot of time to cook breakfast in the morning. Many Americans tend to opt for a simple breakfast, or they might not even cook at all. They might just have cereal and milk. When I was in elementary school, middle school, and sometimes even in high school, I would often eat cereal for breakfast. I genuinely loved cereal, and it was a perfectly good breakfast. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure many of you, the listeners of English with Samuel podcast, probably enjoy cereal as well. It's delicious, and there's a reason why it's so popular among people all over the world. Some of my favorite cereals included Honey Nut Cheerios, Apple Cinnamon Cheerios, and Apple Jacks, among many others. Yes, many Americans consume cereal on weekdays, but on the weekends, we definitely enjoy a larger breakfast. You've probably seen the American breakfast depicted in TV shows or movies where families sit down to eggs, bacon, pancakes, and various other dishes. We certainly don't do that every weekend, but it's definitely a common occurrence. Alternatively, we might enjoy going out to restaurants for breakfast. Perhaps we don't want to cook pancakes at home, so we prefer someone else to cook them for us. Going to a breakfast restaurant on Saturdays or Sundays is quite common. I did this frequently when I was growing up with my family, and I still do it often. As an adult,
Breakfast in other countries, besides America, is often quite different. While I haven't traveled extensively, in the countries I have visited, I've observed significant variations in the type of breakfast people eat. In Europe, for example, breakfast tends to be very small. I was genuinely surprised when I first traveled to Europe. When I was in Spain and Portugal, I realized that breakfast isn't considered a substantial meal there. If you're from Europe, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. For many Europeans, breakfast is simply a piece of bread with some butter or jam, toast, I should say, buttered toast or toast with jam, or some kind of sweet bread, along with orange juice or coffee. And that's usually the extent of it. Perhaps in France, people might just have a croissant and a cup of coffee or a small espresso. For me, as an American, that's a bit challenging. It's not easy for me to eat so little and nothing else. I definitely prefer something more substantial. However, I understand that some people simply don't want to eat that much for breakfast. I completely get that. And I'm sure some of my listeners in other parts of the world have entirely different styles of breakfast. Not just American or European, but something unique that I'm not familiar with. So I would be very interested to hear about breakfasts from all over the world. My typical breakfast, nowadays, is quite similar to a classic American breakfast. My wife usually cooks eggs, bacon, and sometimes hash browns or toast. Hash browns are potatoes that we eat for breakfast. It's a type of fried potato, though I'm not entirely sure how to describe them perfectly, but they taste incredibly good. You've probably encountered them before. We call them hash browns, so I often have those. And we usually include some fruit with breakfast, such as mango, papaya, apples, or sometimes yogurt or a few vegetables. There are various options, but I absolutely love the combination of bacon and eggs for breakfast. That's one of my top favorites. Regarding coffee, it's another significant component of our breakfast. Not for me personally, but for Americans in general. People tend to drink a fairly large cup of coffee in the morning. You've probably observed this before. They don't typically just have small espresso shots. Americans often drink a big mug of coffee. A mug is a type of cup with a circular handle used for hot beverages like tea, coffee, hot chocolate, etc. It's specifically called a mug, so Americans often drink a mug of coffee. I personally don't drink coffee in the morning. While I enjoy coffee, it's not part of my daily routine, so for me, that's not typical. Finally, let's consider the timing of breakfast. People eat breakfast at different times in various countries. I know that in some countries, breakfast might be earlier, while in others, it might be later. I'm not entirely sure when the typical breakfast time for Americans begins, but I believe it depends on individual work schedules. If people start work early, they'll eat breakfast early. If they start work late, they might eat breakfast later. I think that's generally how it is, and probably how it is in most places. However, breakfast is often said to be the most important meal of the day. I'm not certain if this is true. I've heard many people say that we don't necessarily need breakfast. Many individuals prefer to fast in the morning and not eat until later. To fast means to abstain from food. And those who do it will likely tell you that breakfast isn't very important. So I don't have a strong opinion on that, but I personally enjoy breakfast. Now, let's transition to our second topic for today, which is camping. This is another subject that I really love, simply because I really enjoy camping. As an American, I'll be discussing this from an American perspective. Camping is a wonderful pastime in the U.S. A pastime is essentially an activity, entertainment, or hobby. Camping is definitely a popular activity in the U.S. I believe most Americans have probably gone camping at least once in their lives. While that might not be an entirely accurate statistic, in my opinion, at least half of Americans have experienced camping at some point. When I was younger, I used to go camping with my family and some family friends every summer. From the time I was probably 1 or 2 years old until I was around 16 or 17, we went camping practically every year. We usually went in June, July, or August when the weather was pleasant. We visited many different campsites, or campsites. A campsite is simply a designated area where people can set up camp. Typically, you have to pay a fee, but it's usually not a huge amount of money. It's generally affordable and not too expensive. We visited many campsites when I was younger, and some were more crowded with more people, while others were more remote. When something is remote, it means there aren't many people there. It's a little less crowded, a little farther away from society. Remote essentially means it's quite distant from the rest of society. So I've camped in both remote places and places closer to cities. Regardless of the location, I've always enjoyed it, and I still do. Unfortunately, I don't go very often anymore. In many other countries, camping isn't as popular. I've spoken with students from various places, and in many countries, camping is simply not an activity that the general population enjoys. For instance, in Mexico, very few people go camping. It's not a very popular activity there, and I believe many Mexicans would feel unsafe camping. They prefer not to be far from civilization, far from their city. That would likely instill a bit of fear in some of them, though not all Mexicans. I recently looked at Google Maps for campsites in Mexico, around a fairly popular city, and I could barely find 2 or 3 campsites within a 2-hour drive of that large city. I was truly surprised because in the US, if you search campsites on Google Maps, you'll find them everywhere. There are so many options for Americans to go camping. So it was quite a surprise for me to see the scarcity of campsites in Mexico on Google Maps.
Camping is considerably more popular in the US than in many other countries. I believe it's also popular in many Asian countries and perhaps Northern Europe, but I'm not entirely sure where else it's popular. Regarding my own experience and my love for camping, I would say that the primary reason I enjoy camping so much is what I call the spirit of camping. What I'm referring to is the act of leaving civilization, leaving the city behind, and venturing into nature to experience survival without many appliances, tools, electronics, or everyday comforts. It's about being out there with your tent and your fire, a few essential tools, and simply enjoying the atmosphere and the environment. For me, this is a truly fantastic feeling. It's relaxing and incredibly fun. I genuinely find it enjoyable. I love engaging in activities when I camp. For example, I enjoy hiking and fishing when I camp. These are activities that you can savor in nature, in the peaceful and quiet surroundings. In my opinion, they're truly fun. Perhaps some of you might consider fishing or hiking boring, but for me, I don't know, they're genuinely enjoyable activities, and I particularly like doing them because I'm immersed in nature. I believe that the main component of the spirit of camping is being in nature. We don't often get to spend time in nature because most of us reside in cities. So when we have the opportunity to go into nature, it's truly wonderful. It's a distinct experience, and I think that's why I love camping so much. I'm not an expert camper. I'm not particularly skilled at building a fire or pitching a tent. When you pitch a tent, it means you set up the tent, put it together. I'm not adept at pitching tents or building fires or doing many other tasks, but I'm always happy to assist others in accomplishing these tasks. I really should learn to build fires and pitch tents better because I want to acquire those skills, but I've just never paid enough attention to it. I'm always the one helping, not the one leading the effort. But yes, I genuinely enjoy sitting around the campfire at night. This is probably the most enjoyable part of a camping trip. When it's dark, you're with your friends or family, sitting around the campfire and roasting marshmallows. To roast marshmallows, you place a marshmallow on a stick, or a skewer as we call it, and hold it over the fire until it cooks. It turns a little brown, and then you eat it. Or you can combine it with chocolate and graham crackers to make s'mores. You might have heard the word s'mores before. It can be a flavor of ice cream or donuts or other similar things, but authentically, a s'more is the combination of marshmallow, chocolate, and graham crackers. This is a s'more. I absolutely love roasting marshmallows and making s'mores. It's truly one of the best parts of the camping trip for me. And of course, sometimes we tell stories around the campfire, or we even play music. Some people bring their guitar or another instrument, and we have a music session around the campfire.
So there are many activities you can engage in when you're camping, and these activities are all part of what I consider the camping spirit. That's why I love camping, and I hope you do too. Or if you don't, I encourage you to try camping sometime just to experience it for yourself. And who knows, maybe you'll enjoy it. So we're almost done for today. We finished discussing breakfast and camping. Hopefully these topics were interesting to you. I know they're interesting to me. I enjoy both breakfast and camping. In the next episode, I'll choose 2 or 3 other topics, and we'll discuss them as well. Remember that you can always access the transcript for each episode, so make sure you check the notes and find the link to the transcript there. That will certainly help you understand the episode. And of course, remember to sign up for our listening practice seminars at here on this video if you need more practice with your listening. They're only $1. So thank you for listening to today's episode, and I hope you'll return for episode 3 of the English with Samuel podcast.